I believed a quiet wife was a loyal wife. I believed silence meant respect. I believed control meant leadership. I believed that if a man did not guide his wife firmly, he would lose his home. I was wrong.
Welcome to Torah Story Folktale. The village square had never been this quiet. Even the restless children stood still, their games forgotten. Women who usually whispered behind their wrappers pressed their lips together. The elders sat in a half-circle beneath the old Iroko tree, their walking sticks resting on the ground like silent witnesses. At the center of it all knelt Zoko. Not standing. Not commanding. Not feared. Kneeling. The same man whose footsteps once cleared paths. The same man whose voice silenced arguments. The same man who walked through the market as if the earth itself owed him respect. Now his knees touched the dust. His shoulders were stiff, his back straight, but his hands trembled slightly as they rested on his thighs. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, but it shook in places he could not hide. Once, he said, I believed a quiet wife was a loyal wife. A mama tried to rise from the crowd but died quickly. No one dared interrupt him. I believed silence meant respect. I believed control meant leadership. I believed that if a man did not guide his wife firmly, he would lose his home. He swallowed. I was wrong. That single sentence hit the square harder than a shout ever could. The elders exchanged looks. Women leaned forward without realizing it. Zoko lifted his head slightly, his eyes no longer sharp with command, but heavy with something unfamiliar. I learned too late, he continued, that fear builds nothing that lasts. He paused, breathing slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. Let me tell you how one woman taught me, without shouting, without fighting, without raising her voice. His gaze moved across the faces watching him. Stay with this story, he said quietly. It may save a home. Before Zoko ever knelt in the dust, there was Amina. She entered his house as a young bride with eyes full of hope and hands eager to please. She had heard the stories, how wealthy he was, how respected, how disciplined, but she believed what many young women believe at the beginning. A good heart will soften any home. In the early days, Zoko was kind in measured ways. He spoke calmly. He provided generously. He corrected gently, often with a smile that reassured more than it warned. Amina listened more than she spoke. She moved carefully, learned quickly, and asked questions only when necessary. The village noticed. Zoko's wife is well trained, the women said at the stream. She is humble, others added. She will last, the elders nodded. Amina heard these words and felt proud. Silence, she believed, was wisdom. Patience was strength. Then came the first warning. One evening, she served his meal slightly late. Nothing dramatic. Nothing intentional. Just a small delay caused by a stubborn fire. Zoko's eyes darkened. Is this how my house is run? He asked sharply. The words stung more than the tone. Amina apologized immediately, lowering her head. The silence that followed was heavy. The next morning, Zoko brought her a gift from the market. His voice was calm again. I was tired yesterday, he said. Do not take it to heart. Amina smiled and accepted it, relief washing over her. But somewhere deep inside her, a quiet question stirred, one she did not yet have the courage to answer. Was that just stress, or a sign? Amina chose love. When the sharp words returned, she wrapped them in understanding. When his tone hardened, she told herself it was the weight of responsibility. Zoko was a respected man, after all. Men like him carried burdens others could not see. At the stream, when women whispered, she defended him. He works hard, she said softly. He means well. He just needs rest. When her mother asked why her eyes looked tired, Amina smiled and changed the subject. Inside the house, a pattern quietly formed. A small mistake would be met with correction. The correction would carry an edge. The edge would cut deeper than intended. Then came the apology. Sometimes it was a gift. Sometimes a softer voice. Sometimes silence that suggested regret. And Amina forgave every time. She believed love was patient. That endurance was proof of commitment. That if she stayed gentle, he would learn gentleness too. But each time she forgave, the corrections came faster. The pauses between them grew shorter. And the apologies, once full, became brief, almost routine. Correction. Apology. Silence. The cycle repeated until silence became the loudest sound in the house. And still, Amina held on to hope. When love did not bring peace, Amina chose obedience. She rose before Zoko stirred. She learned the rhythm of his mornings, the exact way he liked his meals, the moments when his patience was thinnest. She moved quickly, spoke softly, and answered before questions were fully formed. Obedience, she believed, would calm the storm. At first, it seemed to work. Zoko nodded more often. His voice softened, slightly. The house grew quieter. The village praised her even more. She is a good wife, they said. She knows her place. But obedience did not reduce his control. It fed it. New rules appeared where none had existed before. How she arranged the mats. When she could leave the compound. How long a task should take. Even the way she looked at him while he spoke. Do it this way, he said. Why are you slow? Did I not tell you already? Each rule tightened the walls of the house. Amina moved faster, bowed lower, and spoke less. Yet peace never settled. The more she obeyed, the more Zoko expected. What began as guidance became inspection. What once felt like leadership turned into constant supervision. Viewers would expect calm by now, but calm never came. Obedience had not saved her. It had only taught him how much control she could endure. Amina began to think. If obedience failed, perhaps understanding would succeed. She studied Zoko quietly, the rise and fall of his moods, the hours when he was most demanding, the moments when silence soothed him. She adjusted her timing, softened her tone, chose her words carefully. When she needed to speak, she waited. When she needed to ask, she framed it gently. When tension grew, she withdrew before it could explode. This time, she was not reacting. She was calculating. For a while, it seemed promising. Arguments reduced. His voice lowered. He praised her once or twice in ways that felt earned. Hope returned, cautiously. But Zoko noticed the change. He could not name it, but he felt it. The house no longer bent naturally to his will. Her compliance now carried intention. Her silence felt chosen, not forced. And that unsettled him. He tightened his grip. He questioned more. Supervised closely. Tested her patience deliberately. Small freedoms disappeared. New demands replaced them. What Amina had seen as growth, Zoko saw as resistance. And so he responded the only way he knew, by asserting more control. The audience now understands the truth Amina was learning. Strategy without power does not free you. It only delays the storm. The breaking point came quietly. One evening, after a long day, Zoko corrected her in front of visitors, his tone sharp, his words unnecessary. Something inside Amina shifted. She did not shout. She did not cry. She did not insult him. She spoke calmly. You do not need to speak to me that way. The room froze. Zoko turned slowly, disbelief flashing across his face. No one had ever addressed him like that inside his own house. What did you say? He asked. I said I deserve respect, Amina replied, her voice steady. Even here. The silence was unbearable. Zoko's reaction was immediate and forceful, not loud, but cutting. He dismissed the visitors abruptly, his authority reasserted in sharp movements and colder words. Later, his anger filled the house. Her calm had not disarmed him. It had challenged him. By morning, the consequences were clear. Restrictions tightened. Distance grew. The house felt smaller than ever. Amina learned the lesson that many learned too late. Speaking loudly invites resistance. Confrontation feeds control. And in a home ruled by authority, noise does not bring freedom, it sharpens the chains. After the confrontation, Amina withdrew. She spoke less, choosing her words with care. She moved quietly through the house, measured her steps, and let her hands work without rushing. Every gesture was deliberate. Every glance, controlled. Her fear was no longer the trembling panic of a young bride. It had transformed into awareness, the careful observation of the man she lived with. She watched the rise and fall of his moods, noted the small signs of anger, the subtle ways he sought control, and the exact moments when silence would keep her safe. She learned the art of invisibility without submission. When Zoko backed orders or demanded attention, she did not flinch, but she did not engage either. She created space around herself, a quiet boundary he could not easily penetrate. Inside, Amina whispered to herself, a soft vow repeated like a prayer, "I will survive. I will see this through." Fear had become her teacher. It no longer weakened her, it sharpened her mind. She began to understand the rhythm of the house, the invisible lines of power, and the one truth she had learned painfully: in a house ruled by fear, the quietest person could still control the day. Amina's silence grew intentional. No longer reacting, she began to study Zoko's habits. When he moved, she watched. When he spoke, she listened. When he tested her patience, she calculated her response. She did not argue. She did not beg. She simply absorbed, noted, and acted later on her own terms. She learned when he sought attention, when he wanted obedience, and when he felt pride. She controlled the atmosphere, not the arguments. A perfectly folded mat, a meal timed just so, a small gesture at the right moment, each was a subtle victory, invisible but powerful. Her transformation was complete. She no longer sought to please him openly. Instead, she wove a rhythm of quiet dominance into the daily life of the house. Every move she made guided the household in ways he could not see. The chores continued, but now they served her plan. The rules remained, but she navigated them expertly. Even the servants and neighbors began to notice the shift. Whispers rose, "She is clever. She does not react, but she controls everything." Amina smiled quietly. The power was no longer in loud words or arguments. It was in her calm, measured intelligence, the subtle changes that would eventually make Zoko question everything he thought he knew about authority. One morning, Zoko attempted his usual dominance. "Why is the firewood not ready?" he barked, expecting the familiar flinch or hurried apology. But Amina remained calm. She looked at him, eyes steady, expression neutral. No fear. No trembling. For a moment, he faltered. Her silence was a mirror he could not break. He raised his voice higher, his movements sharper, but still, she did not react. Something inside him twisted. He had ruled every home, every room, every woman, with fear and anger. Yet here was one person untouched. His control slipped, not from resistance, but from her absence of reaction. She did not challenge, she did not attack, she did not beg. She simply existed with awareness and poise. The villagers who passed by the compound noticed the difference too. Zoko no longer roared freely. His presence was tense, careful, restrained. Even the servants whispered among themselves, unsure if the master had changed, or if his wife had become untouchable. Amina's silent plan had begun to work. The balance of power had quietly shifted. Word spread quickly. Zaku, once feared in the market, now walked cautiously. His voice, once booming, had softened in public. When he met other men, he measured his words. When he spoke to the elders, he hesitated, careful not to command too sharply. His authority, long unquestioned, was now observed, measured, and subtly challenged, all without Amina speaking a single word. The villagers whispered, "She has changed him. She does not raise her voice, yet he bends to her presence." Justice had arrived in the form of quiet control. There was no shouting. No public humiliation. No dramatic confrontation. And yet, the shift was absolute. At night, Zaku sat alone in the courtyard, the flicker of the fire reflecting in his eyes. He realized he feared losing her. Not her presence alone, but the quiet mastery she wielded over the house, over his life. For the first time, respect entered his heart, not the respect born of fear, but the respect earned by a woman who would not flinch, who would not beg, who would not submit blindly. He reflected on the years he had ruled with control, on the mistakes he had made, and on the one lesson he could not unlearn. True authority comes from partnership, not dominance. In that silent night, Zaku understood that the home he had controlled with fear had been conquered by wisdom. And for the first time, he felt a trembling he did not despise, the trembling born of recognition, humility, and respect. With time, the house changed. Not because Zaku shouted less, but because he finally listened. The fear that once ruled his home faded, replaced by a careful respect he had never practiced before. He spoke more gently. He corrected less. And when he looked at Amina, he no longer saw a woman to be controlled, but a partner who had endured and outgrown him. The villagers noticed the peace before they understood its source. Amina never announced her victory. She never demanded recognition. She simply lived differently, calm, observant, and unshaken. And in doing so, she taught a lesson older than any law. Strength is not loud. Silence is not weakness. Control creates fear. Respect creates loyalty. The elders will later say that Zaku was changed by wisdom, not force. And the story would end with a truth whispered from mother to daughter, from home to home. The woman who survived learned what shouting never taught.